Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent hunter, bear hunter, and outdoorsman. In this episode, we're breaking down spring bear travel patterns because this is one of the biggest missing links in spring bear hunting success. A lot of hunters understand where bears feed. They know green up matters. They know south facing slopes are important, but they still struggle to actually find bears consistently. They glass good looking country, hike a lot of miles, and somehow still miss animals that are clearly there. The problem isn't effort, the problem is usually movement. Spring bears don't move randomly. They don't travel like fall bears. They follow very specific routes tied to efficiency, calories, snow, and terrain resistance. When you don't understand those travel patterns, you end up hunting feeding areas in isolation instead of hunting the paths that connect everything. This episode is about explaining how spring bears actually move across the landscape, not just where they eat, but how they get there, where they prefer to travel, why they choose certain elevations, slopes, and terrain features over others, and why bears often pass through places hunters never think to watch. Once you understand spring bear travel patterns, you stop guessing. You stop hopping from spot to spot hoping to glass a feeding bear. And instead, you start predicting where bears have to move and you put yourself there. That's when bears stop feeling rare. Let's break it down. Spring bear movement is driven by one overriding principle: energy conservation. Coming out of hibernation, bears are depleted. They've lost body mass. Their muscles are weak. Their digestive system is ramping back up. Every unnecessary step costs energy they don't have to spare. Because of that, spring bears are incredibly selective about how they move. They avoid steep climbs whenever possible. They avoid deep snow that forces post-holing. They avoid thick brush that slows travel. Instead, they choose routes that allow them to cover ground with the least resistance. This is where a lot of bear hunters misread sign. They see tracks crossing a ridge or cutting through timber and assume bears are traveling everywhere, where in reality, bears are funneling movement into specific lanes that solve multiple problems for them at once. Spring bears are not commuting long distances daily. They're making short, deliberate movements between bedding cover and feeding zones. Those movements repeat because the terrain doesn't change and the bear's needs don't change. Another key difference from fall is timing. In fall, bears often move aggressively to food, sometimes covering large distances as they race against winter. In spring, urgency is lower, but efficiency is higher. Bears move when conditions favor them, when slopes warm, when snow softens, when feeding windows open. This means spring travel patterns are often more predictable, but more subtle. Bears may move only a few hundred yards at a time, but they do it in the same way on the same line day after day. If you're only looking for bears where they feed, a lot of times you can miss most of this movement. But if you understand where bears prefer to travel, you can intercept them even when they aren't actively feeding. Spring bear hunting becomes far more consistent when you hunt movement corridors and not just destination points. Terrain is the primary architect of spring bear travel patterns. Bears choose routes that minimize elevation gain, avoid resistance, and keep them close to cover. In spring, that usually means side hills, benches, low angle ridges, and contour lines rather than straight climbs. One of the most common travel routes for spring bears is the side hill. Side hilling allows bears to move between feeding areas and bedding cover without burning calories climbing or descending steeply. These routes often sit just above feeding slopes or just below timber edges. Benches are another high value feature. Benches provide flat or gentle slope travel with good visibility and often connect multiple feeding pockets. Bears will use the same benches repeatedly, especially when snow still blocks higher terrain. Low angle ridgelines can also act as travel corridors, but not the sharp, exposed ridges a lot of hunters gravitate towards. Bears prefer ridges that offer gradual travel, broken cover, and easy escapes into timber. If you're serious about becoming a consistent Western black bear hunter, I've built something for you. The Bear Hunting ebook series is a complete progressive education system, 7 volumes that take you from mindset to execution. We start with foundations of reality, breaking breaking down the myths and mental mistakes that ruin seasons before they begin. Then we move into bear behavior and movement so you understand how bears actually live, travel, feed, and use wind. From there, we dive into spring bear hunting and fall bear hunting, green up, food shifts, pressure, and why bears seem to disappear overnight. Volume 5 teaches you how to read terrain, aspect, ridges, benches, and edge habitat like a professional. Volume 6 sharpens your glassing and scouting so you stop missing bears in plain sight. And Volume 7, that's execution, spot and stock strategy, wind control, closing distance, and finishing the encounter. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 60% off at backboneunlimited.com. Drainages play a role here too, but not always how hunters expect. Early spring, bears often avoid deep shaded drainages that hold snow and cold air. Instead, they travel along the edges of drainages where sunlight reaches and feed appears first. Another critical terrain factor is the snow line. Bears rarely push through continuous deep snow if they can avoid it. Instead, they skirt snowfields, following melting edges, and travel where footing is the easiest for them. That creates very defined travel lanes along those snow boundaries. This is why spring bears often seem to pop up in unexpected places. They aren't random, they're following the path of least resistance dictated by the terrain. When you start looking at maps and landscapes through that lens, asking where a bear would naturally contour instead of climb, you're going to begin to see travel patterns that a lot of hunters walk right past. Food doesn't just attract bears, it directs their movement. In spring, bears are constantly adjusting travel routes based on where the best calories are available with the least effort. Early greenup doesn't blanket the landscape, it appears in strips, fingers, and patches. Bears connect those patches through predictable paths. A bear feeding on a south facing slope may not stay there all day. It may bed nearby, then move laterally to another feeding pocket as the sun shifts. That lateral movement is where a lot of bears are killed or missed. Bears often travel parallel to slope contours, checking multiple feeding areas without committing to one spot. They may drop down briefly, feed, then move again. If you're only watching feeding zones, you may never see that movement. This is especially true in areas where feed is scattered. Bears move more frequently but still efficiently. They aren't wandering, they're linking food sources together. Now, as greenup progresses upslope, bears adjust their travel routes incrementally. They don't suddenly abandon lower elevations. They layer their movement. Lower routes stay active longer than a lot of hunters expect, especially if feed quality remains high there. This creates overlap zones where multiple travel routes can intersect. Those intersections are gold for bears, moving between feeding pockets, bedding cover, and warming slopes because they often pass through the same choke points repeatedly. When you understand how food availability directs movement, not just destination, you can set up where bears pass through even when they aren't actively feeding. And that's how you find bears on days when everybody else says they must not be moving. To hunt spring bear travel patterns effectively, though, you need to stop thinking in terms of spots and start thinking in terms of flows. First, try to identify early greenup zones, then identify bedding cover nearby, then look for the most efficient routes connecting the two. Those routes are where bears travel. Position yourself where you can watch movement, not just feeding. Side hill vantage points overlooking benches, contouring trails, or snowline edges are ideal. Those positions let you see bears transitioning rather than only feeding. And timing matters here. Travel often happens during warming periods, late morning through afternoon when bears shift between zones. Long glassing sessions during those windows outperform short checks. Another key is patience. Travel movement can be slow and subtle. The bear may take minutes to cross a slope. If you rush glassing or reposition constantly, you're going to miss it. And finally, understand that travel patterns repeat. If you see a bear move a certain line one day, make sure that you understand the odds are high another bear or the same bear are going to use that same travel line again. Spring bear success comes from pattern recognition, not just constant relocation on your part. Spring bear travel patterns are also built on efficiency. Bears move where terrain is easy, where food is available, and where energy costs stay low for them. They contour instead of climb, skirt snow instead of crossing it, and connect feeding pockets through predictable lanes. If you hunt only feeding areas, you miss a lot of that movement. If you hunt travel routes, you can intercept bears even when they aren't actively feeding. Look for those side hills, benches, low angle ridges, and snowline edges. Watch how food patches connect. Glass patiently during warming periods and let movement reveal itself. Now, if you want to sharpen this kind of understanding even further, that's exactly why I built Team Backbone. It's more than just a membership, it's a way to sharpen your edge with exclusive tools, strategies, and a tribe of relentless hunters. Inside, you're going to get 20% off site wide on all Backbone Unlimited gear, the option to have a t shirt shipped to your door every month, full access to the digital content vault of guides, checklists, and backcountry strategies, a private Facebook group with direct access to me and a community of driven hunters, direct call, text, or email access to me for personalized advice on training, hunting strategy, or just sharpening your edge, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways. This is built for the guys who train for the hunt, push themselves in the off season, and want to be part of a tribe that makes them better. If you're ready for that kind of inner circle, then Team Backbone is waiting for you at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.